Oh, okay. You're not close enough. You're like dreaming on the street.
All right, so if you've been observing outside today, you'll notice that right now or earlier, it's been gloomy. No matter what part of Southern California you've been at, couple like about 20 minutes ago, the sun just kind of like broke out. So, and seeing, I went from seeing gloom to now seeing some sunshine. It's pretty nice, especially for like the first Saturday of June. All right, here. Well, hello YouTube, and welcome all who are watching. I'm Jesse Tovar, and this is Afternoon Poetry at My Place Cafe. My Place Cafe is located in Hensley Square. Hey, 2057 North Los Orbis Avenue, Suite 10, Pasadena, California, at the corner of Woodbury and Los Robles. My place is open every day from 7:30 a.m. to 3 p.m. Since My Place Cafe is still open during this live stream, stop by and get a coffee, cold brew, or latte. Above My Place Cafe is the Zen Den, a yoga studio ran by Jody Smith. Jody is also the founder of Magic Melon and Mama, an urban apothecary, lotions and potions herbal product line, aka Wellness for the Culture. Learn more about these and other yoga sessions, including purchasing some Magic Melon Mama products at thezendenla.com. Although walk-ins are welcome, please be advised there is a 15% limit for each class, and space priority will be given to those who have signed up for a class in advance online at Zen Den's website or the Class Pass app. Today's featured poet is someone I saw read as a special guest for Woodbury University's First Come, First Serve. After his appearance in 2021, I immediately wanted Kevin Ridgeway to be part of this reading series I have put together for the second year in a row. I am so glad he agreed to be part of it. By the way, Ridgeway also appears in Dryland's 10th issue. Kevin Ridgeway has so many collections. One that has caught my attention the most is Purple Crayon Poems. I think that's because I loved having a large pack of crayons, Crayola crayons growing up. I still wish I could have the 1990 Deluxe 120 crayon collection. Well, that's just me revealing my childhood obsessions. Anyways, 19 years before COVID-19 describes the narrator's most traumatic moments in their life history in comparison. There are some hilarious pieces like more will be revealed. I'll admit that I don't completely understand. My Uber driver gets it. I love how the fractured porcelain of a demented angel is formatted on the page. It's kind of like a prose poem, but yet it's not. There's just lengthy statements. Again, I'm glad he's here. Latanya Smith, Jody Smith, and I welcome Kevin Ridgeway.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. All right, I am going to open with a poem that is newer. It is called I Survived IKEA, and all I got was this lousy poem. My girlfriend called a cab when we were struggling to find the exit in a labyrinth assembled with the hallmarks of my Swedish heritage. Swedish Christmas songs blasting in my ears after I failed to finish my meatballs over lunch and started having the biggest panic attack of my life. She got me outside and held my hand on our way to the emergency room, where a doctor told me that I had gravy on my mustache. I felt well enough to lick it off at that point and thanked him in the same fractured language my grandmother always spoke when she was too afraid to teach me how she climbed out of her pain long before her fire ever went out, and when we were unable to reassemble her so we could feel safe enough to reassemble ourselves. I have a book with me, a book of poems that was published a few years ago. It's from Stubborn Mule Press. It's called Too Young to Know. I'm going to read a few poems from it. The first poem is called The President of My Fan Club. I was waiting on a bench at a suburban library for my girlfriend to join me for an afternoon reading magazines. While old men disturbed the peace with their walking farts, A group of developmentally disabled people and their aides descended upon me and my paperback of Anthony Burgess' dystopian literature. A diminutive girl who let out earth-shattering howls and one-word exclamations sat right beside me and began to slowly pet my long blonde hair, murmuring "pretty" every few seconds as I calmly thanked her, and the aide asked me if I minded. I politely said no, as my admirer lavished me with attention. I whispered Warren Zevon lyrics to her, and that crooked smile grew wider with each deafening wail as people dropped overdue books through metal slots, trying not to look. Thank you. This poem is called When Grandma Met Elvis. A photograph sits on the fireplace mantel, her proud smile beneath her perm, standing side by side with Elvis, holding a microphone, his mouth agape, frozen in time. She glanced at it every afternoon and insisted that the king was a gentleman and that they had such a lovely time together, regardless of the large sign behind them that read, Movie Land Wax Museum. I'm going to read a poem called Rico Suave. The tween ladies adored him, and the teachers gave out extra credit to him for being so handsome. He was a pillar of the sixth grade community, sweeping every awards assembly and holding doors open for the special needs kids. He was the only guy in our class who had a mustache, a sign of his advanced maturity. He also sat next to me, and he liked to whisper, "You're nothing but white trash," over and over again into my ear before spitting directly into my face. I made feeble attempts to defend myself, but he always blinded me with his palm and said, "Talk to the hand." The teacher diffusing the situation by blaming it all on me. He complained to her that I forgot to wear deodorant, and the entire class burst into a kind of mocking laughter I never got used to. From the time he sucker punched me in the school cafeteria, to the time he ruined my favorite polo shirt during a class pizza party, after he smeared pink cupcake, icing bedazzled by multicolored sprinkles, against my chest, and their laughing faces poked voodoo doll holes that stung. Our teacher yelled at me yet again. The detention she gave me spelled out my ongoing social condemnation in blackboard chalk that was chipping away slowly into pulverized dust. This poem is called Her Dead Husband's Ashes. She had told me about them, where she stored them, and I was perfectly fine with having him around. She had been gone for several days before I finally opened the drawer and pulled out the cardboard box that I opened, and there he was, a pile of gray sand I had heard so much about in her colorful stories that I got nervous as I said hello and introduced myself. I was lonely, and he completely understood. He asked me for something to drink, so I got us some beers. We laughed and talked until sunrise. I got emotional about her, and he cheered me up by letting me sort through him in search of his remaining teeth. All was going well with us bachelors until the day the Neptune Society came and took him away to be scattered like all the other people I get too close to. Hello, Don. Good to see you. Good to see you.
Would have got here 5 minutes earlier, but had to patronize the place.
Yes, me too. Me too.
What you reading from, man?
I'm reading from Too Young to Know. It's a book that came out a couple years ago from a press in Missouri.
Yes.
Stubborn
Your
Girl.
Facebook, what do you call it?
Cover photo, yeah, that's right. That's right,
I
yeah.
remember it well.
Yeah. So I'm reading selections from that. I'll read a few more. I think I'll read this one. It's called Medication Time. We stood in a crooked line that extended from the nurse's station to the activities room, dressed in our pajamas at 3 on a Tuesday afternoon. We peeled and scratched the Elmer's glue skins from our hands in the wake of arts and crafts group, where I declined to create a self-portrait out of macaroni, instead laboring over an elaborate beaded bracelet I was going to give to the pretty Armenian girl who overdosed on New Year's Eve, having failed to die like the rest of us had all wanted to. Nerves tickled my pumped stomach when she kissed me on the cheek, her packed bags in hand, after she scrawled her cell phone number on the front of my Xeroxed relapse prevention handout. I never saw her again, but I was on top of the imaginary world at the front of that line, with that bracelet hidden in my sweaty palm and my mouth opened wide so that the Filipino nurse could be sure I swallowed my lithium, daydreaming about that crazy girl mixed up with crazy me, both of us far away from that ward of catatonic lunchroom Pictionary teammates, in a place where we would have more than just the will to live.
Okay. First I've ever heard someone go do that
That's
during
good.
live reading.
That's good.
Yeah.
The will. Very
Um,
poignant line.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to read one more from this book. It's called Fat Jim Morrison. That's what he calls me when he ambles out onto the porch, my cigarette in one hand, my beard in the other, with an entire galaxy of suicidal flowers hanging from my shoulders. I growl from a Doors song. I've been down so goddamn long. 5 years since I was the perfect age to die bloated and full of heroin and absinthe in a Parisian bathtub. My fans and admirers throwing dirty graveside celebrations that leave them more wasted than my short life. But I have instead lingered beyond such a fantasy, with the reality of growing too old to be a rock star, exhausted by a career based on amateur theatrics, whose self-destructive choreography has left the soundtrack to my life at near bottom of the pop charts. My new front yard companion slaps my large gut, takes a sip of his root beer, and proceeds to tell me a long story about how he got so high he woke up old, with his entire life behind him in an inglorious fog, all alone, with no memories to wash away the pain of unwanted survival. I had a book come out recently. It's called Rejection Letters. It came out from Arroyo Seco Press, Thomas R. Thomas. It's a collection of my chapbooks between 2015 and 2020 that are out of print. So I'll read like a poem or two from that. This might change up things a little bit. I wrote a chapbook of poems about Texas, some time that I spent there, and so I'll read a poem from that. It's called Hook, Line, and Sinker. I don't behave well in luxurious environments. I tend to leave bloody footprints on marble floors and cigarette burns on expensive bed sheets, my stench still apparent in the conditioned air. The oysters on the half shell and hush puppies in the West Village of Dallas cleared my angry mind. And the beautiful people, men in their loafers with no socks, to leagues of women in enormous hats and peacock gowns, all made us smirk in our lint-covered, cash-only grubbiness, washing away our faded troubles. The lengths of the waitress's skirts at the Flying Saucer Bar in downtown Fort Worth really boiled my maker, and the highways to the dry flatland boondocks tanned my hide and fried my steak. Take me away on that passenger ship into the sky home before this all turns into the end of Easy Rider, with too many layovers and hangovers and too many weary faces in mirrors. Happy Meal. I was standing in line at group therapy waiting for powdered eggs when someone finally seemed to have more BO than me. And a new patient asked me if I was an observer, not a patient. Just like I thought my late girlfriend was a counselor and not a patient at the same rehab we met each other in. Just like my mother and her mother found their spouses in rehab. But I had little time to ruminate over all of this when someone farted, what we all thought to be akin to a rotten egg. And for a moment, I was cured of all my problems outside of that one fart. I think I've read 2 poems that mention farts already. So we're off to a good start. Yeah. I'm gonna read some newer poems. This poem is called How to Say Thank You in Swedish. I run into the darkness of every single restless morning because that is when my mother woke us up at 3 a.m. to go to work and drop us off at my grandma's house. My brother and I shared a love seat in her living room, with television shows drifting in the background like black and white ghosts. My brother would crash almost every morning in that old love seat, but never me. I stood there and spoke to our 80-year-old grandmother, who fled Sweden and who raised all of the adults I thought I knew. A woman troubled greatly by the recent death of her husband, and a kindness that made her come closer to sainthood than anyone else I've ever known. I was the last child she raised. I asked her endless questions about her life, and unlike everyone else, she didn't belittle me, and she shared her stories and her strength with me, with the remainder of her broken heart, trying to be sure that I felt her love and all the confusion and pain she shared with me, and that everyone else lied about and didn't want to face. She was too horrified as the matriarch of the family to show vulnerability to anyone else other than me. Her heart was completely shattered when she raised me to be an old soul who shows her nothing but honor. Here's another poem. Touches on similar stuff. It's called Last Man Standing. The faded patches on the school green would always dance with dirt inside of a heat-born mirage. My classmates argued over which of their kickball teams would have to take on the liability of my inclusion. My father was in prison, my brother was away at college, and my mother was always working to pay for both. My best friend was my elderly great-grandmother, until her dementia helped her forget who I was until the day she died, at a time when nobody else wanted to see her that way. I had no choice but to light my hope in the flicker of the same old black and white movies she loved, with dead actors and dead actresses who all picked me to watch them alone every day as the sun faded into a sleepless night, haunted by the desperate wish that I would wake up inside an old silent movie, in a daydream where I would never feel left out, in a place where they'd beg me not to leave any of them behind. Here. You mentioned purple crayon poems. I don't have that with me, but I wrote a poem after that. That was published in a magazine that I like a lot called Nerve Cowboy. The poem is called Purple Crayons Forever. When they gave me my contraband back, it had half a purple crayon in there. I got home and changed shirts, felt something in the front pocket. It was the other half of the purple crayon. Hang on, there was some wind.
It was only a partial lunar eclipse.
All right. This next poem is called What Grandpa Wore Every Christmas. He wrote us $100 checks and sat back in his reclining chair, attired in combat boots and swim trunks he was wearing over his boxers while my mother was there. He cracked a fake smile at the big and tall shirts we'd gotten him that he never bothered to wear after locking himself inside, where he rocketed into a zone where he could fly away and forget about his failures in the past. And those swim trunks expanded as he became submerged in ocean water as though he was MC Hammer, parachute pants. He was locked inside the attics of his haunted mind with tortured whispers no one could hear but me. This poem is simply called Ted Dance. The girl working the counter at Starbucks asked me for my name, but then she retracted her question with a never mind, because my low-budget coffee needed no preparation, as it silenced my eagerness to share my name with her. And I did my best to act all cool in my thrift store striped shirt and baby blue COVID mask, which fogged up my Dollar Tree sunglasses. I was blind enough to bump into a row of chairs on my way out the door and to the curb until I could see again, with the solemn vow to go to a place where everyone will know my name.
That poem and Don's poem of works that delve into like advertising as a cultural study.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Cultural study is something that advertising is something I heard about as cultural study back in grad school at Poly. Or both literature and other.
This poem is called My Father Never Taught Me Anything. My father never taught me anything other than how to saw women in two, with electric charisma that leaves us both daydreaming in separate prisons, and all of them dying while waiting for us to join them on the outside. He taught me how to break hearts by way of the art of self-destruction. He taught me how to rob, cheat, and steal the pants off anyone I could manipulate. He never taught me how to drive a car, or how to ride a bike, or how to fish. I looked in his dusty dresser drawers for artifacts that he left behind. His 1983 wardrobe and his last pack of Camel non-filters, half of it smoked on the day he was captured, the other half brittle with straws of tobacco, which tasted like a very bitter kind of silly string that is anything but silly and is killing him as he battles lung cancer in prison. He taught me the power of mystery and the art of disappearing. but it has all gone down like a movie. One big mushroom cloud of devastation as we drift further into the darkness that my father taught me. All right. This poem is called Andrew Dice Clay. Made my mother laugh, a sleazy trickster word player hater decked out like a secondhand Elvis, ready to pull into our driveway with Joey Buttafuoco warming up the front passenger seat of a convertible for her as they all rode in tabloid daydreams of defective guys she could never change. This poem is called The Death of the Coppertone Girl. The billboard stood above Interstate 5, and it featured a pretty cartoon girl with her bikini bottoms tugged down in a mechanical tug of war with a cartoon dog, which showed off the tan line of her pale derriere. She lost one of her legs during a storm that left the dog decapitated. They both stood there until the bitter end, when they disappeared, and the sign turned into a large ad that read, "Shop at Walmart." And I grieved the loss of the first woman I fell in love with and could not save. Let's see. True loneliness is watching other people bond and form meaningful relationships while I sit here talking to myself until I have developed a cognitive fantasy juicy enough to transport me from a world filled with people who all consider me less important to them than I was to my dead mom and my dead girlfriend. I was left with not a cheerleader in sight now that I've driven all their love away, blinded by a trauma that helps me forget what makes me want to stay here, even when no one will talk to me but my dad and collect calls from prison. When we commiserate over his dead wife and my dead girlfriend, and how neither one of us deserved the love taken away from us by a universe where I float into black holes in search of any of the love they might have left behind here in this long, uncertain darkness. To fuel a hope, I'll wake up in the arms of another woman I fooled into thinking she loves me. Guess I'll read like 3 more poems. This poem is called Time is Running Out and There's No Happiness. His regrets left tears on the first page of his letter on prison stationery. Guilty for not being there for me and for being an asshole who only cared about drugs. He lost my mother forever, and he and I nearly lost each other during a time of silence when he saved my life from becoming cold and bitter. That's when he told me that I was the greatest thing to ever come out of his and my mother's love. Misspelled words that saved my life out here, with the burden of freedom, in pursuit of an elusive happiness beyond the prison walls that hide him from me and me from him, as I decide to give us both another chance. I mentioned in the poems that my girlfriend passed away. This poem I'll dedicate to her. It's called My Girlfriend Kissed Mr. Rogers. He was the first man I trusted and loved in the wake of my father's disappearance from my life. He wore a cardigan I envied. He was a smooth operator who never let me down, and her loving spirit complemented his, as they killed everyone with the same relentless kindness that killed them both. She embraced the gentle public television star on stage after he spoke at her college graduation, and she whispered lusty poetry into his ear before she surprised him with a kiss. They were joined together in a force field of an electric goodness so potent they could have used it to save the world. She left me for Mr. Rogers, who she followed into a cosmic neighborhood somewhere in a great beyond where they earned an impossible sainthood. The compassionate lip lock she initiated years ago still haunts my wildest daydreams, where I can hear her whisper, "Won't you be mine?" This poem, this final poem that I'm going to read, is simply called Gerard Depardieu. My roommate smokes a cigarette and attempts to impersonate a French actor whose name we kept repeating out loud in our obnoxious attempts to speak with a French accent before sunrise. And that's when one of our other roommates poked his head out the window after we woke him and everybody in the neighborhood up. He looked down on us on the patio and he said, "Pardon my French, but you two need to shut the fuck up." All right. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Someone calling me? Oh, no. Yeah, so did I. So were you saying something? Sorry. Oh no, I know that. So if you're hearing in the background, we have Spectrum Publishing here with us today. The reason they're here is because they came to see Kevin Ridgway read. And thank you, Kevin, for reading to us here at My Place Cafe. Thank you for making this My Place Cafe event a reality. To follow or to get in touch with Kevin Ridgway, you can follow him on Instagram at ridgway.kevin. So we're gonna shift gears here. So this live stream is gonna end soon because Spectrum Publishing will have their poetry writing workshop at 3 o'clock. That it might live stream on their Facebook page, but I am gonna live stream it on my personal YouTube channel. So if you want to tune into that, my personal YouTube channel is Jesse Ray Tovar. So that concludes this live stream. Thank you for watching, and just remember to make my place your place.
Guys.